So overview of project management. By the end of this session, you should be able to define the key terms in project management. You're going to have a basic definition or a basic understanding of the key concepts. We do not want to start this journey and then some are thinking project management, oh, is this? Other people are saying it is this. We want to start at the same level. We want to have some sort of operational definition of the key terms in project management, okay? We'll also be able to describe the environment within which projects operate. We know that projects don't operate in a vacuum. They operate within an environment. And a good understanding of those environments, you know, it helps us very much in terms of, good management of those particular projects. So we'll be talking about the environment within which projects operate. Then we also know that projects happen in processes, okay? There is the initiating processes, there's the planning processes, there's all those processes. The implementation, M&E, of controlling and closing. How do they interact? Okay, how do they interact with each other? So we're going to be looking into that. So introduction to project management. Now, the way I have organized this, I have organized it in such a way that even if you have never been to a project management class, you will be able to grasp the idea behind the project management. So don't worry if probably you are, this is your first class in project management. Now, project management is an emerging management profession. It hasn't always been there. It's not like human resource or finance that have been there for ages. Project management is something that is emerging, okay? And we are seeing that it's an attempt to consolidate many roles that have previously been played independently by different organization skill sets. So previously, you have realized that maybe finance is operating on its own. Human resource as a skill is operating on its own. Procurement is operating on its own. However, within the context of a project, you have the project as the umbrella, and then down here, you have what is called project finance, okay? You have something else under that project called project human resource, or people in project, as we will be calling it with the team that we're going to be studying a project management with. Project procurement. So we are consolidating the roles that were being played independently within one umbrella term, which is project management. Okay, great. So that is a bit about project management. So when you talk about project, the first question that should come to your mind is, what can I see within a project to say, wait a minute, I think that's a project, but that one is not a project. This is a project, this is not a project. So we have on one side what we call project, and on the other side, we have organizational operations, okay? So is it possible for you to differentiate the two? Now, before we differentiate the two, let's look at some of the similarities between organizational operations and projects. Number one, organizations perform work. Work involves either operations or projects. And both of them, they share common characteristics. So whether it's a project or it's an organizational operation, both of them are performed by people. Okay? They are also constrained by limited resources. And they are also planned, executed, and controlled. So those are some of the characteristics that bring both operations and organizational, both organizational operations and projects together. Okay, these are the similarities. But we are saying, while operations are ongoing and repetitive, projects are temporary and unique. And that is the biggest difference. If someone were to ask you, what's the difference between organizational operations and projects, you will tell them, you know what? Operations are ongoing. What about projects? They're temporary and unique. Okay, temporary and unique. So a project can thus be defined in terms of the distinctive characteristics. It is temporary, or it's a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. So when we attempt to define a project, what do we use? What terms do we use? What strategy do we use when we attempt to define a project? What we use is its distinctive characteristics. Okay, what are those things that are unique about a project that you cannot find in organizational operation? Number one, a project is temporary. There is no project that is, continuous forever and ever. This means it has a definite beginning and end. Project teams seldom outlive the project. Now, for those who are doing, all of us, one of the things that we are going to do is we are going to come up with a case study project, because at Vantage, we take a very practical approach when it comes to learning these things. So if you're doing a monitoring and evaluation, you're going to develop an entire M&E system for a project of your choice within the next 5 weeks. Okay? So the first thing that I will ask you to do is to choose a project of your choice that you're going to use, that we will together develop an M&E system. We usually do this so that if, for example, you're done with your course and you find an M&E consultancy advertised by UNICEF or UNDP, you would be comfortable in applying for it, and you're not going to shake, wondering where to start. So when you will be choosing a project, I will be requiring you to tell me exactly when it is starting and exactly when it is ending. Same case with, for example, those who are doing a resource mobilization. Okay, you will need to develop a resource mobilization action plan for your project. You will need to develop a concept note, and you'll need to develop a proposal. So you will need to choose a project that you would want to fundraise for. And then, together we develop a resource mobilization action plan, we develop a concept note, we develop a proposal. So you'll need to identify the exact starting date and the exact end date. Without that, it is not a project. So that's number one. Number two, time frame is clearly defined. So we do not say a project is starting from 2022 to 2027. You must say it is starting on 1st January 2022 to 31st December 2027. Okay? And because all of us will develop objectives, yeah? Again, that is something that I'm going to be very clear on. We must develop smarter objectives, not just smart objectives. Usually, nowadays, we usually say objectives need to be smarter. They need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And there is another ER at the end. I don't know who can guess what the E and the R at the end means. Anyone with an idea? Maybe you can write on the chat function what you think E and R. It's not official, really. It's just some professionals who are saying, I think objectives could be better if they're smarter, not just smart. Anyway, I'll be looking out to see what you say on the chat function in terms of what could that E and R mean. Great. So for every project, the objectives need to be clearly defined. And by the way, we usually take a bit of time on objectives, because I've realized that over the years that I have been training these things, some people usually have a challenge when it comes to objectives. So we deal with it thoroughly. Projects are unique, okay? This means that every project has a distinguishing characteristic from others, okay? It does not matter how similar projects seem. These projects there must be something that is unique about them, okay? Even if it is done by the same people or same resources, there must be something unique about each project. Jacqueline Corril is saying ER means evaluated and revised. Jacqueline must be doing M&E. Gitahi is saying effective and realistic. Okay, you're trying. I want to, you guys to keep trying. Probably someone will get it. And by the way, in my class, I usually say, you should not fear giving me a wrong answer. As teachers, we do not fear wrong answers. In fact, we like wrong answers, because a wrong answer tells me that I am needed in this class. If you guys knew everything about M&E or resource mobilization, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't even be able to pay my rent. So a wrong answer, proves to me that I'm still needed, and next month I'll be able to pay my rent. So in this class, we usually interact. And yes, so event row, hey, okay, all right. Yeah, keep trying. Now, there's also something called progression elaboration when it comes to projects. Projects proceed in steps, continuing steadily by increments. This means that it will be broadly defined early in the project and will be made more explicit and detailed as the project team develops a better and more complete understanding of the project. There is not a single project that you will understand completely 100% at the beginning. None, zero, because at the beginning, you're thinking about the future. We don't know the future. So as things progress, as we move on with the implementation of the project, we go getting a better understanding of this particular project. And that is why, for example, for those who are doing M&E, that is why monitoring is very important, because you keep checking, okay, guys, are we moving too far to the west? Okay, we adjust the sails. Are we moving too far to the right? Let's adjust so that we remain on track, because we do not know what is going to happen tomorrow. We continue getting a better understanding of the project as days go by. And by the way, the ER, thank you for those who have tried. the ER, some people say it doesn't matter how specific a project is, or how measurable it is, or how achievable it is, or how realistic or time-bound. If an objective is not exciting, if it's not exciting, no one will want to be part of it. Okay? There must be some level of excitement. There must be some level of, people wanting to be associated with that particular objective. Then other people usually say, even if an objective is so time-bound, or so measurable, or so specific, but if it is not rewarding, no one will implement that particular project. So they usually say, yes, it must be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, but it also has to be exciting and rewarding. But that's debatable. But I totally agree with them. Great. So projects, therefore, may be undertaken by organizations to respond to specific needs, requests that may not be met in the day-to-day running of operations. They can be taken at all levels of the organization, and we have a few examples of projects there. Some examples include development of a new product or service. That can be a project. Why? It has a specific start date, end date, clearly defined objectives, and all those kind of things. Effecting organizational structural change. You don't effect a structural change forever. Okay? Developing new or modified information system. That's a project. You can say, we are starting to develop, we have finished developing. This is the product we have created. Running a political campaign. Like in Kenya, we have elections coming in August this year. So there is a specific date when the government says this is the official date of starting of election campaigns, and this is the end date. Actually, like a day or two before the elections, they say no more campaigns between now and, you see, so it's a project. Constructing a building or a facility is also a project. And I'm curious. Let me ask who? I can see Justine Atemi. Good evening. I like to keep touching base so that I don't lose my students. Justine. I don't know that Justine is with us.
I'm with you.
Great. From what we've talked about,
yes.
Do you think planning for a wedding is a project?
Yes, it is.
Why is that so?
Because weddings have specific dates that any couple that wants to have a wedding must agree on a date. They must also agree on a budget, the resources that they will need to be able to accomplish the budget. They must also have a team or a committee or a task force that will help them execute some of the tasks that they will have to engage in before the wedding is a success. And they will also need to put in place mechanisms that will ensure that their wedding is a success. So I think a wedding is a project.
So it has a very specific objectives.
Yes.
And it has time frame, you don't start planning a wedding when you're 15 years old, isn't it? There's a time you start planning. Yeah?
Yes.
Great. Now, thank you for that, Justin. Calvin, I also want to ask you a question. I know your hand is up, but I also want to ask you a question. Calvin, are you with us? Calvin Fredson Munisi. Calvin, please unmute. Okay, I think Calvin is looking for the unmute button. Let me engage Helen. Helen, good evening.
Good evening.
Are you the Helen who did the advanced Excel?
Yeah, I'm the one.
Ah, nice. Now, Justin has just told us that planning for a wedding is a project. But I'm curious, is a marriage a project?
A wedding is a project. A marriage is not a project.
Why is it not a project?
Because a marriage is not temporal. It should be permanent.
It doesn't have an end date. Does it have a start
date? Yes. It doesn't have. Maybe in the case, no, it doesn't have. You don't plan it with end in mind.
Yeah. So that is not. How about bringing up a child? Is that a project?
Yes.
Why is that so?
It's a project. Is it a project really? No, it is not.
Why?
It is not a project.
Why is that?
Because
so?
it is also. It doesn't have a specific time frame. Yes, a child will outgrow after 18 years, but the parent will still take care of the kid.
Yeah. So it's also not a project. So it does. We don't get to a point where we say we are not bringing up this child anymore.
I don't think so.
Okay. Itahi is saying that I think bringing up a child is a project. Itahi, why do you think so? Maybe you could just tell us why you think so.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Why I think bringing up a child is a project is because there is a certain age that you need to release them to the world. And if I compare it to a project, then I think the rest is about sustainability in terms of them being able to live what you taught them. So in terms of when you're bringing up, there is an expected date that they will leave your house. They will find themselves a job. They will find themselves a spouse and start their own family independent of what you may have wanted for their life. Well, it can go that way or the other way, but they will be independent. So I think upbringing has kind of an end date, although it doesn't mean that you completely divorce. The rest is just about probably sustainability and consultations here and there.
So you need to ensure that your project is sustainable.
Exactly. Thank you.
Great. I think someone here who is saying, let me first of all hear from Kepo Faustino, who is saying that a marriage can be a project. I'm curious, Kepo, why do you think a marriage could be a project?
Thanks so much. To me, I'm looking at the current situation, diversity that we are living in. We've seen scenarios whereby people go for like contracted marriage for a period of time. And
it's a contract, not a covenant anymore.
So, okay, traditional marriage is not a project, but, but with the current diversity, things have been happening that we have witnessed people ending in a certain period of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ajok is saying that bringing up a child is not a project. because it continues, it's a continuous process. There is no specific end. I mean, it depends on how you argue it, because I think even me being an old man right now, you know, my parents still care. They still want to know whether I ate or not. I mean, but in the context of, you know, like bringing up a child and taking care of them and providing for them and, you know, all those kind of things, I think then there is an end where even as a child, you're supposed now to break away from, you know, being dependent on your parent, in which case then that becomes a project. Let's hear from Charles. Charles, what do you think? Charles Chan. Please unmute. Charles, okay. All right, we'll get back to you, Charles. Great. So at least we have an idea of what exactly a project is and what a project is not. So having said that, therefore, the question that comes to mind is, what is project management? Now that we know what a project is. So what is project management? Now, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. Now, that is simply what project management is. Now, when you're talking about project management, you have the knowledge, you have the skills, you have the tools, you have the techniques. You take all those things, you apply them to project activities with just one aim. And what is the aim? To meet project requirements. Now, you do not do project management if you're not meeting project requirements. If you don't meet project requirements, then you're not doing project management. I know after 2 weeks, one of the things that the M&E team will be asking me is, why are we applying all these things to project activities and not project outputs, and not inputs, and not project outcomes? Why are we choosing on activities themselves? Because by that time, you know, they will be so knowledgeable in those things. They'll be able to critique. And one of the things I'm going to tell them is, the only thing you can influence within the context of project is activity, because it is activities that you apply on the inputs that provides the outputs, and then the outputs will give you the outcomes, and then the outcomes will give you the impact. Those are things that we're going to be talking about. Great. So project management includes initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. And these are what we will be calling, later on, we'll be calling them project management processes. We will be calling them that. Project management processes. Initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. Okay? Now, what is the work of a project team? Now, project team work includes, number one, competing demands, that is the scope, time, cost, risk, and quality, stakeholder with differing needs and expectations, identified requirements. I'll come back to this in just 1 minute. There's something before I go to, yes, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to the aspect of stakeholder, but I first of all want to talk about who a project manager is. And you're saying that a project manager, like you guys, who are going to be project managers or who are project managers, You are an individual who is accountable for accomplishing stated project objectives. So you are accountable. Key responsibilities include creating clear and attainable project objectives, building the project requirements, and managing triple project constraints, which is cost, time, and scope. And I'll spend a few minutes on that, those three constraints. So as a project manager, you are accountable to deliver project objectives. Now, what do we mean by accountability? Accountability means the buck stops with you. Regardless of how much you're able to delegate, the buck stops with you. You are accountable. When I am teaching on leadership, I usually tell leaders, you can delegate authority. You can delegate responsibility, but you can never delegate accountability. Accountability remains with you. Okay, you can delegate other things. So as a project manager, the accountability for delivering project results, project objectives remains with you. So the triple project management or project constraint is also referred to as the project management triangle. And we are saying that the discipline of project management is about providing the tools, techniques, and work that enable project team, not just the project manager, to organize their work to meet these constraints. Now, this is what we are calling the project management triple constraints. And I want to spend a minute here. If you have a project, I know we have engineers on board. Imagine you have a project, you've been given a project to construct a road in your village. And then you construct that road. And then maybe I am the one who has given you that work or the funds to use to construct that road. Then you come and tell me, you know what? The project you gave me, I have done it successfully. There are three questions that I will ask you. Number one is the scope. I told you to construct 5 kilometers of tarmac road. Did you actually construct 5 kilometers or you constructed 4.8? If you constructed 5, then you got the scope right. If this was the thickness, I don't know, allow me to use the layman's language. I know the engineers, maybe you have some terms that you use. But if we had agreed on 1 foot of thickness, and you actually did 1 foot of thickness of that road, then you got the scope right. But if any of that was not done, then there are question marks with regard to the scope. That is number one. The second question that I will ask you is, did you maintain the schedule? Did you violate the time frame? We agreed that road was to be done within 1 year. Did you do it within 1 year? So regardless of whether you got the scope right, if you did it with twice the time that you are allocated, then you cannot come to tell me that you implemented that project successfully. Because the success of a project is not just measured from one dimension. It is measured from several dimensions. So, did a good job with regard to the scope. How about the schedule? Okay. Now, if you got the schedule all the time frame right, the third and last question that I will ask you is, how about the budget? Did you overshoot the budget? You could have gotten the scope right, you gotten the time frame right, but you used twice the amount of money that we had agreed upon. In that case, you still didn't succeed in, completing that project within the timeline, within the project quality. Okay, so those are the three key components of project quality: scope, schedule, and cost or budget. Now, I want to stop sharing for a minute because I want to say something very important. The work of a project manager is to manage those three components: scope, schedule, and cost. Your work as a project manager is to manage those three. However, sometimes, because of unforeseen circumstances, you might be required, you might be needed to compromise on one of the three because of something that was unforeseen. Okay? And you might now be required to decide, okay, out of these three, which would I compromise on without compromising the overall quality of the project? I'll give you an example. For those in Kenya, and I know that this also happens in other countries, when you are running an election and a campaign, an election campaign, there are so many people who are printing t-shirts. Okay. So you've been given a project to print t-shirts for a politician. Now the election is on 9th of August. And you have been given that job today. Then for some reason, you guys, you're not able to raise the enough amount of money that are needed for that, for those 1,000 t-shirts. So you are like, if we reduce the quality of the material, this money will be enough. Okay? Or if we delayed a little bit, because right now everyone is printing t-shirts, and therefore t-shirts printing. Sorry about that. Let me mute. Okay. So you can decide, okay, there are so many people printing t-shirts now, so let me wait a little bit until the cost of printing comes down so that I can go print mine. Now you can wait and then print your t-shirts after the election, after 9th of August. And then you're bringing your t-shirts to your politician, and he's asking you, why did you wait for this long? Then you tell them, you know what? I did not have enough money. So I looked at the three constraints and I realized, let me not compromise on the cost, the money. Let me compromise on the schedule. That politician will not even pay you the remaining money because those t-shirts, they're useless. So you can compromise. Instead of printing 1,000 t-shirts, you print 500. That is acceptable. Instead of using some material, you can use less quality material. That's still okay. That's still okay. But you cannot, if I was the person who has given you that money, I will tell you, you cannot compromise on the schedule. The schedule is important. Or maybe you're building a days because, or a tent, you're putting up a tent because the president is coming to visit. And then some challenges come and you have to compromise on something. You cannot compromise on the schedule. Compromise on the cost, compromise on the scope, but don't compromise on the schedule, because you cannot tell the president to come next week if you wanted to come today because the tent is not ready. Okay? I know we also have doctors on board. You are operating on someone, and then as you're operating on someone, you realize that there's some complications inside there. Will you, stitch that person up before you work on that complication so that you can save on time? You say, no, my operation was taking 1 hour. I can't go beyond 1 hour. I can't compromise on the schedule. I'd rather compromise on the cost, on the scope, instead of compromising on the schedule. You cannot do that. It doesn't matter even if it takes 5 hours, because you cannot compromise on the scope. So as a project manager, it is your job to decide which of these three would I comfortably compromised on, because you will never find a project that is 100% smooth. You will always compromise. Okay. Yes, Gitahi is saying, I am picking some aspects of the outcomes of t-shirt story based on the purpose of the t-shirt. Absolutely. So I wanted us to really grasp that concept, and I would want to, in case anyone has any question, please ask in terms of the triple project constraint. Okay. Tiso is saying schedule is a national schedule, which is uncompromisable, but others can be. Yes, very, very important. Maybe you could write your question or comment on the chat function so that we are able to engage. There are some things you cannot compromise, but there are others. I would actually want to hear a project where maybe you can't compromise on the cost, maybe. Charles, what do you think? Last with Charles.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, we can hear you.
Are you here? Okay, okay.
Yes.
I think as regards schedule, you cannot compromise to finish late, but you can be able to compromise to finish earlier. Maybe if you are supposed to work with it 5 people, then you increase the number, maybe 10 people. You can be able to bring down the time, but you can't compromise by extending the time. That project will fail. Secondly, there are situations where maybe you plan the labor at a certain cost, maybe higher cost. Then you find that labor is cheaper. When you find that labor is cheaper, you can also now increase maybe number of workers and use the money for other things. But you can't compromise with the increase in cost. That one will either fail the quality immediately. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And what we are saying is that all these decisions depend on which project are we running, the context of the projects that we are running. Gitahi, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
I'm just reflecting about the aspect of the scope in terms of that when you are carrying out any project,
yes,
you have a purpose. For instance, when you're building a road, you have a purpose of people to be able to use that road to get their products to the market, to get to places quickly, to be able to save man hours, fuel, and so forth. So now, when you are looking at your output or your activity, the point at which you are able to intervene, is it in the realm of the scope where you look at the quality aspects? Because if that road, people will have to pay a lot of money to use it, however good it is, however quick it is, and then they cannot be able to afford it, then is it really accomplishing what it is? So it is the so what questions. Arts in the humanitarian world usually try to relate what we plan and design with the results, and we like asking the so what question. So is it in the scope that we plan for the outcomes? For example, if we want more mothers to give birth in health facilities, when we are planning to build a health facility or to train health workers, you know, to have outputs of health, an output, for example, of health workers who are very competent in handling the mothers, or a facility that is very well equipped. You know, where do we look at the outcome level or the result level of these activities and outputs that we are trying to produce? Is it at the scope level that we look at that, or which level? That is where
absolutely, yeah, yes. It's definitely as a scope level, and those are some of the things that we are going to be talking about, because when we and just to use, for example, the same example that you have used, we want more mothers to be able to give birth in a health facility, and therefore we want to build a health facility that can accommodate those people. So depending on the results that we are looking for, then we are going to go for a particular scope. So there's no compromise on that. However, I have worked in an environment where the aspect of a health facility, the schedule becomes more important than the scope. I was working in a refugee camp called the Dadaab refugee. And at some point there was an influx of so many refugees, and we needed a health facility so fast that we didn't care whether we are using tents or canvas, you know, to roof, or whatever it is that we are using, you know, to put on the walls. We just needed that health facility ASAP. And that therefore becomes a schedule critical kind of a project. So the bottom line here, the bottom line, what kind of a project are we dealing with? The kind of a project matters a lot. Now, I don't know whether Charles Chan is able now to talk to us. You had tried talking to us a little bit earlier. We wouldn't want to lock you out, Charles. Please confirm you're able to talk to us now. I still see your hand is up. Okay, great. Yes, Charles. Yes, I see you are now able to talk to us. Please tell us what you think.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to comment on the issues of the compromising aspects of the projects management, like the issue of compromising the costs, compromising the schedules, and compromising the scopes. I was also looking at the aspects of asking a question about the quality. What if you have some problem with the cost, and this cost, if you meet it, then you are not going to meet the scopes of the projects. And if you want to meet the scope of the project, then
oh, we are losing you, Charles, and you're having a very, very important question. You're breaking. Okay.
Then the quality of the service will. Hello. Hello?
Yes, there's a point at which we lost you for a minute. Eh?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me, Charles? Okay, I think Charles is.
Yes, now I can hear.
Ah, great. So the question you're asking is sometimes you have a challenge with cost, and
yes, I can hear you. So my question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, the question is that if you have a project where if you meet the scope of the projects, then the cost is not enough for you to meet the scope of the project at the identified or maybe stated quality. And if you have to reduce the scope in order to meet the cost, then you can meet the quality. In such a situation, what can you do?
Absolutely, and I think that's a very, very important question, because, and I know Engineer Mahenge can give us a very good, insight into that. Because you could have a building, you want to construct a building, but you need a certain thickness of the metal to make that building safe, but you do not have that particular money to buy that thickness of that metal. So what do you do? Now that is a programming issue, okay? And that is the point at which you now engage stakeholders and you tell them, if we are not getting the funds that we need to come up with this kind of a project, then we'd rather not start it at all. Because we do not want to construct a building that is going to be a risk. So sometimes when you play around with the cost and quality, and someone was telling me yesterday about the Chinese, and they were like, I don't know, I think someone who sells equipment, and she was telling me, the Chinese will tell you, even if it's a safety equipment, we are going to make something for you depending on the budget you have. But this is a safety related equipment. How do you tell me you're going to make something for me based on the budget that I have? Why are you compromising on quality to save on money? It's not possible. So I think those are some of the decisions that as a project manager, you really, really need to make. Yeah, so let's hear Engineer Mahenge, your opinion, please, as we move on. I see your hand is up. Engineer? Okay, so let me read what is here. Okay. I've understood the schedule and the cost, but I need a little bit more elaboration on scope. Okay. Don't worry. I hope we are recording this. We will be able to share. Gitahi, thanks for that. Right. All right. So allow me first of all to talk about something very small, and then I will come back to teach Leonard and someone who's using a Realme C115. I know your hands are up, but before I give you an opportunity, allow me to share something very small that I had skipped. That is on the stakeholders. I need to talk about stakeholders. There's somewhere we were talking about stakeholders. Yes, here it is. Now, we were talking about a project, what project team work includes. And we said competing demands, and we've talked about that. Now, stakeholders with differing needs and expectations. Again, that is very important. As a project manager, you will have very many stakeholders, Now, each of these stakeholders will have a different requirement or a different need from that project. Let's go back to the road in the village. How many stakeholders do we have? We have very many stakeholders in that road project. We have the local politician, who is a stakeholder. We have the contractor, who is a stakeholder. We have the users of the road, who are stakeholders. We have the government, who is a stakeholder. We have the institution financing. If it is not coming direct from the government, if it is maybe the African Development Bank, that's a stakeholder. Now, each of these stakeholders, they have different requirements. They have different needs. The local politician, they want to gain political mileage out of that particular project. Okay. The contractor, they want profit. They're a business, they want profit. Okay. The government maybe is looking at, specification, the specification of the road and compliance and those kind of things. The villager, the user, then they just want a safe road that they can use to transport their produce to the market or something like that. So you need to bring all these stakeholders together so that they can agree on the one thing they are going to see on that particular road, to say, despite my personal interest in this road, there is this one thing that I'm going to say, to see in order to pass this road as a successful project. So it is your job as a project manager to be able to bring these people together. Just bring them together, put them on the table, okay? Because if you do not have stakeholders who are speaking the same language, if you have stakeholders who are differing in terms of their interests, in terms of their expectations, especially if those expectations are conflicting, then it becomes very hard for you to succeed in that particular project. Okay, great. So the other thing that I want to talk about, maybe before I go to that, I want to give Leonard an opportunity to say something before we move on. Leonard, you wanted to say something?
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
I was just wanted to say something about the scope and quality, scope and cost of or a schedule.
Yes.
The work of a project manager.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is very dangerous. Mm-hmm. We compromise the side of quality.
The quality.
Because quality, yes. Mm-hmm. Because that is the main thing which it is required when doing something. You do it to your perfection. If we especially, for example, if we are building as a 5-story building or a one, you have heard of several buildings being demolished
Yeah, and even some collapsing.
Collapsing without even noticing. People are inside and gone. That was, if you can just go to the root of this, they compromise on the quality.
Absolutely.
They compromise on those qualities. They didn't compromise because they wanted to use the that was there or to come up with that building.
Absolutely.
That is, they just compromise on the quality. So I better, as you have said, if the is not enough to bring up that building, it is either to stay until you are well off with the finance or that you wanted, that thing that can give you more problems.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're very right. Thank you very much, Leonard. And I think it is very, very important to be sure that if we are, imagine compromising on quality. And you've reminded me before I come to the one who is using Real Me. When I was working in the Dadaab refugee camp, we were building some structures for the teachers, some accommodation houses for the teachers. Because I was working in an organization that was, running schools, UN-funded schools. So we were having more teachers, so we wanted to build some houses for the accommodation. So we give someone a contract. But because we didn't have an engineer on board within our organization to monitor the work, we got an engineer from a Danish Refugee Council. So we went with him, we went with him to check how far the building is, and we realized that they were now doing the rental. That rental. I know there could be engineers on board, and you could understand what I'm saying. Now, when the engineer I went with went up to see those metal bars that usually move like this, because we usually have like 4 moving like this, and then rings, tying that before you put the concrete. So when he went with a foot and he started measuring the distance from one ring to another, he said, "You guys are building a very dangerous building." I didn't know the distance between one ring and another matters, because me, I'm not an engineer. So because the engineer was not to stay there for a long time, he told me, because you were here, ensure before they put in the concrete, go and measure and ensure the distance is like. So when the engineer left, those contractors started trying to compromise me, and they were like, "You know what, Benson? We have some cash here for you. Let's just put these." I think they wanted to save some money for the iron bars. And I told them, "You know what? If I let you guys do this, I am one of the people who is going to live in these houses that you build. Suppose a house collapses on me, or it collapses on my friend." Okay, so I was very, very keen to ensure that they are not compromising on the scope. Okay, so that is very, very important. Ensure you do not put lives at risk. So as a project manager, if you see maybe the people who are, you're working with are compromising on the quality, call them out. You have a responsibility, a divine responsibility, to ensure that you do not compromise quality. Great. So after discussing what a project is, I want us to talk about what a program, therefore, is. And I want to, first of all, engage someone to tell us the difference between a project and a program. Let me engage. Let me see. John Wanyama. John, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, tell me, in your opinion, what do you think is the difference between a project and a program?
I think in my own understanding, I believe that a program is something that I don't know whether you are meaning a program like a church program that ends in the same day.
No, no. I don't mean that. Come on. There's a difference between a project, like an education program, or there's something like that.
Yeah. So for me, I think a project is sorry. A project and a program. A program is something that has been put in place, but it has that a longer time that is going to take is there. Compared to a project that has a time limit, you know that at this time the project will be ending at this particular given point. That is according to my understanding.
So the difference between a project and a program is the time frame.
Yeah, time frame.
Okay. Calvin, do you agree with John? I'm seeing Calvin somewhere. Yes, Calvin. Calvin. Okay. Calvin is making some tea for us. Let me engage. I want to engage people who haven't talked a lot today. Priscilla Kipsang. Priscilla. I don't know whether Priscilla is with us. I see people have decided to go make some. Yes, Tiso. I see you want to respond to that.
Okay.
Between a project and a program.
First of all, thank you very much. I'm Tiso Govana from Ethiopia.
Yes.
The difference between project and program is project is a bit not a bit, but it's a larger agenda compared to program. And program is something entry or subsidiary complementary to the project. It is existence of project is very important for the existence of program. Therefore, the program is specific tasks or to be completed under the project within the time provided, time and resource available. Program should not be out of the scope of the project. Therefore, program should be complementary and in consonant with the project. It's like project is a mother, then the program is subset and subset and of the project.
Yeah.
The umbrella is a project. Then sub elements, sub tasks, sub activities to be performed, to be accomplished within time frame and provided available finances or budget is yeah. Individual, but now okay, sir.
Yes. Let me engage Sunday. I want to believe I pronounce your name correct. What do you think is the difference between a project and a program? Now, according to Tiso says that the mother and the program is a subset. What do you think?
Okay, what I think is when it comes to a project, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so when it comes to a project, we're talking about a single thing, like it's kind of like focused on one thing, For example, we are talking about maybe what can I say? Take us back to earlier when my friend Atem said wedding is a project. That's a one-time project. It's like single and all the focus is in that project. But when we go to a program, we look at a collection of projects. It could be maybe you're trying to come up with a what? Let me see. So many like tiny projects, you know how they can be compiled like into like several of them, like you break them into several, but a project actually focuses in one. You have to begin it and your focus is on that one item. You don't have to like, okay, today you're on this project, the other day it's on this. There's a focus, because you see in a project you have to begin it, like actually it's the time scale, as my other friend said, the time scale matters, because when we go to a project we find that a project focuses on the time, a well-defined time that is given, such that it has a beginning and an end. But when it comes to a program, we can have endless programs. So yeah, that's what I think.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that some sort of a collection of projects would make a program, which
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Let's hear what Dalmatius has to say. What's your opinion, Dalmatius?
Yeah. Thank you. Greetings to everyone. I think a project is basically something that looks at a specific or singular endeavor in delivering a tangible output. For example, like we may talk about, for example, when we talk about like project manager, who is responsible in ensuring a project delivers on its intended output.
Yes.
So basically, that's what basically a project really targets to achieve, and it's normally defined. It has got a time frame and a budget attached within that schedule. While looking at the aspect of a program, I think this refers to multiple projects which are managed and are delivered, or maybe in a single package. Yeah. So this is where, like, of course, we may ensure maybe achieving the outcomes, or maybe ensuring that this program itself hits the intended target in a specific period of time. I think that's I just felt I should share.
Absolutely. That is very, very, very correct. Now, let me see what you guys were saying on the chat. T-source, to my understanding, the scope is the degree of coverage of the project as well as cost. Okay. Yes, Stephen is saying a project is a single focused effort that produces a concrete result, whereas a program is a grouping of connected tasks. Okay. Yes, Nyasande, I think we got your idea. John, a project is a single activity focused. Nyasande is still talking about time scale. One program could be complemented by more projects. Stephen is saying marriage is a project activity done. Gitai is saying, I think the difference is in scope. A program seeks to address a bigger challenge, more long-term, more cost required, and so forth. Under the program, you can set a number of projects to break down the milestones and make them more knowledgeable. Kepo Faustin is saying, I think a project is a single unit of specific task with specific goals, but a program is a collection of projects managed under the umbrella of different dates. Zungu is saying a program, marriage is a program, but wedding is a project. Marriage is a program. Okay. Bona is saying, I'm running a mentorship and empowerment program, not project for the youth. Program. I love that. Elaine is saying, the difference of a project and program is about objectives. A project might have and objectives, but program can have different objects that want to solve a challenge. So Bona is talking about his program, I mean. Charles is saying the difference between project and program is that in project, there's coordination of activities, while in program, there's coordination of projects. That sounds interesting. That in a program, no, in a project, there's coordination of activities. In a program, there's coordination of projects. Sounds very interesting. Project focus on where the program on context. Okay, great. I see we are getting somewhere. So now a program, like most of you have said, is a group of projects managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits that may not be available when they are managed individually. So there are projects that may not be able to, achieve some benefits if they are managed individually. But if you bring them together and you manage them as a group, you're able to achieve objectives. That is what is called a project. A program. Many programs include elements of ongoing operations. E.g., many electronic firms have a program or program managers that are responsible for both individual product releases and the coordination of multiple releases over time. So I think someone who said that a program can be something that is ongoing, you're very, very right. In some application areas, program management and project management are treated as synonyms, but they are not supposed to be. We need to know that there's a difference between a program and a project. So I want to believe that is clear. Okay. Someone is saying, so program is broad and project is broken component of the program. Yes, you're right. Now, there's what is called now a sub-project. There is up here, there is the program. In the middle here, there's a project. Down here, there's a sub-project. Again, sub-project is just one project that is subdivided into smaller projects. Projects are frequently divided into more manageable components referred to as sub-projects. Sub-projects are often subcontracted to external enterprise or another functional unit in the performing organization. You may have sub-projects based on the project processes, phases, or according to the human resource skill required, e.g. installation of plumbing or electrical fixtures on a construction project. You can be constructing a skyscraper, and then you have that's a project. Then you have a sub-project of plumbing, sub-project of electrical work, sub-project of security, and those kind of things. So those are what we call sub-projects. So that is it. That is what I wanted to talk about today regarding a key, overview of projects management. My thinking is that now we have a basic idea of what projects are, some few basic concepts about projects, so that as we now move into the more detailed and more technical concepts in our areas of study, at least there's a basic understanding of what projects are and what project management is. Okay. So I don't know whether there is any very pressing question before we, I know we have done we have exceeded by 10 minutes. We usually try as much as possible to finish at exactly 9:30 East African time. Yes, but I think because it's the first day, we did a bit of extending. Yes, we are going to share the slides and the recording. Let me first of all stop recording.